What is up, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. Today is our college football week 11 preview and breakdown. Joining me, he is Ryan Reese of Philly Sports Alliance at Philly Sports PSA. What's up, Ryan?
Not much. What's going on? We're ready to talk a little college football. It's been a little minute. And listen, we're all riding the high off of what an exciting weekend, not only in college football, but the NFL. So I'm ready to talk a little college ball tonight, man.
Yeah. First two questions. Week 10. In your opinion, what was the main takeaway we learned from Week 10?
That it's sad. This is going to be a little off the wall, I guess, but it's sad that the Pac-12 is dying. Honestly, they've been playing some really good football, and there's some really good football teams in that conference. I mean, Washington USC was such a great game. Oregon's playing great this year. They're absolutely in the mix, and yeah, I mean, it's just UCLA seems to be again they're flirting with top 25, but they got a great defense, which is surprising under Chip Kelly. Usually it's known for the offense, but his defense is playing really well, and yeah, it's just sad that this conference is essentially coming to an end after this year, as it's going to be stripped for parts. And there's still a couple of teams left that are still trying to figure it out and try to get somewhere, but all the major teams are going to be going elsewhere next year, and then the college landscape is going to look quite different for sure. So
I agree. My take is, we got Mike in the house. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's going on, buddy?
I wish the college football playoff had expanded this year. There are so many teams, and it's so even. Even the powerhouses like Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama up until today, which I'll talk about in a second, looked vulnerable. They looked beatable at times. And I wish we had that, because this has been such an exciting year in college football. And my biggest takeaway was Alabama going from kind of a fake contender to a real contender in a matter of like one game. I thought Jalen Milroe and his performance against LSU and him being able to keep up with Jaden Daniels and that LSU offense was nothing short of remarkable. This is Jalen Milroe is a quarterback that was benched not too long ago, and what he did with his legs, he made some big throws. Alabama's real, man, and all of a sudden they look like a shoo-in for the college football playoff if things kind of go their way as expected.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just said it, the college football, playoff to be expanded next year. But I mean, think about all the teams that are right now even just in the top 10 that aren't going to make these playoffs, as of right now. I mean, you have a team like Washington, Oregon, Texas, trying to think of who the other, Alabama, obviously. Oklahoma lost, right? So they're kind of knocked down. But anyway, there's still some really great teams that are going to miss out, and I feel like you're like you said, the mix in that kind of after maybe you want to say Georgia and Ohio State, and maybe Michigan, you have a bunch of teams that are really, really, really good that all deserve it, and I would love to see how it would play out, this year with the expanded playoffs. So.
I agree, man. Let's go into our biggest winner of Week 10. Who do you got? I'll go first because I knew where you're going to go, and I'm going to steal your thunder. It's Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Always never play by the rules, do you?
And he was sensational. 2 sacks, a pick 6, single-handedly destroyed Notre Dame's college football playoff chances. He was awesome. He was straight awesome. He was everywhere. it's in coverage where Jeremiah Trotter Jr. looks so great. It, every time I see him do the acts,
Oh, I know.
doing what his dad did in Midnight Green, it just makes me smile.
It's right here.
Yeah, it's special. So
Yeah.
Jeremiah Trotter and that Clemson defense, we've been kind of disappointed by Clemson all year long. Still, you would probably call it's still a disappointment, but they had their moment against Notre Dame there. I thought Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is a first-round talent. The Eagles will never draft him unless there's some sort of medical issue, red flag that causes him to fall, like Nakobe Dean. But he's special.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's funny early on in the draft, process, and we can say this because I feel like we have kind of been right there. We are the early draft process. For those who don't know, but yeah, he was obviously very touted, and then when some of these popular sites, the mock draft sites, kind of got caught up to us, he started kind of slowly drifting back into the second, and you kept seeing him kind of drop a little bit, and partly it's the whole linebacker thing, and partly he had a kind of a little run where he didn't do much, and Clemson, again wasn't doing that great, and he then comes out with a game like today, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, he is amazing, and he is easily a first round talent, and to even question it was silly. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they're gonna have to trade up. They're gonna have to. Some miracle is gonna have to happen, and also somebody is going to have to, chloroform Howie for that first pick and make the linebacker pick, which again we all know hasn't been done since 1979. For the Eagles. So it's looking less and less likely, but man, it's a fun ride to see this kid play.
Yeah, if anybody knows any scrolls that can like shapeshift and transform their bodies into Howie Roseman just for one night, hopefully
that's all you need. Yeah, that's all you need is one night.
Just one night, just kind of lock Howie in a closet for one night. Give him a burger or something. He's used to working in the closet, and let us take Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Because let's be honest, Nakobe Dean has looked really bad in coverage, really bad.
Yeah, listen, he's had a bad couple of games, and listen, obviously, I'm not one to throw in the towel yet, but yeah, listen, I think. He needs a little more time to kind of figure it out and continue to get his feet wet. And listen, I'm always going to be one for getting the playing experience and whatnot. So figure it out as you go. And listen, he brings some of the other intangibles that I really like. But yeah, his coverage abilities need to grow and grow fast.
And it's the injuries as well. He got another foot injury against Dallas again. Left the game. So we'll see. Let's get into week 11, our biggest games of the week. This weekend's slate is absolutely loaded. I think there's 5 top 25 matchups again this week.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah. What's your big game of the week?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I personally am going to go with, again, I'm going to stick to my Pac-12 bias, apparently. I'm going to go with Washington, Utah. I have really, really been enjoying Washington this year. I mean, I really am. And, they're 9-0, and they have just been playing absolutely amazing. Penix Jr. has certainly risen his game. I think he's, already over 3,200 yards, 26 touchdowns. I mean, he is absolutely playing amazing. Rome Odunze almost has 1,000 yards already, 56 catches, 7 touchdowns, and they've literally played 9 games. The two of them, the combination of those two, are absolutely lethal. And I really do like this Utah defense. And we've talked about Cole Bishop a lot on this on this program and some of our other earlier draft stuff. And yeah, listen, I really am kind of curious to see how Cole goes up again, and that Utah defense goes up against such a prolific offense in Washington. And yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see this Pac-12 matchup. I mean, Utah's ranked 18th, Washington's 5th. I think Utah has 2 losses under their belt, but again, in that heavy Pac-12, those are where those 2 losses come from. So Utah's certainly looking to redeem themselves and try to really kind of knock off Washington, who, for all intents and purposes, are probably going to end up finding their way into the playoffs, hopefully.
The most fascinating element of that game last week with Washington against USC was how they went from the best passing attack period in football and said, not today. We're going to run it down your throats.
Yeah.
And Dylan Johnson, who was one of my winners of the week, gained 256 yards on 26 carries and 4 touchdowns. The dude's career high before that was 100 yards.
Wow. Like that, I didn't know.
This was a Washington team that really didn't run the ball that much.
They didn't need to.
They didn't need to. And to be able to just like flip a switch and say, we're a running team today is really impressive. You touched on Michael Penix Jr., who is right there for Heisman, man. He's so good. He's my QB3 in this draft. He pretty much always has been. There was some time when Shedeur Sanders was making some noise, but
right, yeah, and there was a lot of buzz and excitement around him. And let's be honest, he is a very talented player. But yeah, listen, some of the Colorado games haven't gone his way, and he has looked human. So I can definitely see him kind of slipping a little bit. And meanwhile, that same time period, Penix Jr. has just been absolutely rising and just flying that football around the field.
Anthony says USC does not play defense. Their defense is so bad.
Yeah.
Like,
but yet they have a couple of good guys on there that you'd think they'd be better, but they're not. Anthony, really good point, buddy. You're absolutely right, though. Yeah, they're not good. I mean, let's be honest. Pac-12 isn't really known for their defense. So
right, yeah. I'm going with Bo Nix as my player of the week. Oregon goes up against USC this weekend. That should be one to watch. My biggest game of the week is Michigan versus Penn State. Been waiting for this one. Defensively, these two teams are super close to each other. This is the number 1 and number 2 defense when it comes to limiting first downs from the opposition. Penn State has the better pass rush. They rank number 1 in the country at sacks. Michigan is the best team in coverage. Penn State has the number 1 run defense in the country. They allow, ready for this, Ryan? 2.0 yards per rush and 60 yards per game on the ground. That's 10 yards less than the number 2 team in the country. That's how elite this run defense is for Penn State. I think this game will boil down to offense, and that's where the differences kind of lie. Both teams have really good offensive lines, but it's the playmakers on Michigan that I like a lot more than the playmakers on Penn State. Which Drew Aller is going to show up in this one. We saw him really shaky, and rightfully so. Like, that's a brutal environment to play against Ohio State, and he was missing throws left and right. I didn't like the game plan where they tried to win it with Aller's arm when they have a great rushing attack with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, and it was just a hot mess. But going back to Michigan, man, you have J.J. McCarthy, who's putting up a ton of numbers. You've got Blake Corum, who's not putting up a lot of yardage, but efficient, 16 rushing touchdowns, 5.2 yards per carry. And then you get to the Michigan wide receivers, who I think are vastly better than Penn State's wide receivers. Michigan has 3 receivers with 400-plus yards, led by Roman Wilson, who has 10 scores on the season. And these are big play. This is a big play offense because all three of the top Michigan receivers average at least 15 and a half yards per reception. They move the ball down the field with ease. I think at the end of the day, Michigan's going to be too much for Penn State, but I'm expecting a great game.
Yeah, no, I mean it always is a great matchup for sure. When Michigan and Penn State line up, and I always find it great because I have plenty of friends that went to Penn State,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have a small group that are huge Michigan fans. So, and they're all friends together. So, it's constant, bickering and talking trash all week. In fact, it's already started. So it's absolutely fantastic. This one's the only thing I'll say is this one's in Beaver Stadium, and that's their only hope, honestly. I think, and like you said, the offense for Michigan is vastly better, but man, Michigan's run defense or I'm sorry, run offense is very, very good. So the stats you just brought up really make me curious as how Michigan's going to utilize their offense, knowing how great Penn State is at their run defense and how efficient their runners are. Are they going to try to break that down? Or are they going to go another way? I mean, they obviously have the ability with McCarthy and some of their wide receivers there. So, yeah, and then again, you're going up against Kalen King. So, still, it's going to be a knockout, drag out, big fight up in Beaver Stadium, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, there's some big names prospect wise for Michigan, but the two ones to keep an eye on, at least for my purposes, Will Johnson, a cornerback for Michigan. He's not draft eligible, but he'll probably be a top 10, top 20 pick in a couple years. He's an elite recruit. He's phenomenal, amazing in coverage. And then Rod Moore is also one to watch out for. Rod Moore is a safety, great athlete. And I feel like he's going to be a big problem. And I've said this on this show many times and other shows. One of my favorite linebacker prospects in the entire nation is on Michigan. His name is Junior Colson. He's having a phenomenal year. He's a big reason why Michigan has been elite defensively. So definitely want to check out that guy. We'll get into more Eagles targets in a second. But John says great rivalry, PSU, Michigan. It's going to be a great game. I honestly think more pressure is on Penn State than Michigan because this is like Penn State's shot. Pound for pound, this is one of the best rosters they've ever had from a talent perspective. And they're going to be great next year. They've got a lot of great players next year coming as well in the following draft. But they got to do it, man. This is it. And we all know about James Franklin. We all know he's a great recruiter.
Yeah.
It's like death taxes and then Penn State losing against Michigan, Ohio State here in big moments. Yep.
I mean, listen, it's what Penn State does, sadly, is they run through usually they run through the rest of the Big Ten and some of their other cupcakes that they usually schedule. But when it comes to Ohio State and Michigan, they just always struggle. Every once in a while, they'll get a victory here and there, but for the most part, it's hard for them to run through the Big Ten without getting a loss from one of those two. And listen, they always seem to be the ones that are sitting third in the Big Ten, right behind Michigan and Ohio State. And since the playoffs, Michigan and Ohio State have both been involved. And Penn State's just trying to get a piece of that. And they already lost to Ohio State in what was a really great game. They ended up losing by 8, but still, they need to get this victory if they want to prove, for moving forward, that they're capable of beating either one of these teams.
Yep. All right, let's roll on to the next segment and the top matchup to watch. I'll lead us off here. I'm going Ole Miss versus Georgia, and my matchup to watch here is Jackson Dart and Trey Harris versus the Georgia defense. Ole Miss has been just super underrated this year. They have an elite offense, 12th most total yards per play, and offensive touchdowns in the nation. They have the third most yards per pass in the nation at 10.1, which is behind LSU and Washington. LSU and Washington's offense is elite. So that just gives you a picture of how good Ole Miss has been. And then you get to Georgia, and their defense is legit good as well, as always. They have the third best third down defense in the nation, and they are just loaded with prospects that the Eagles should be looking into. Cornerback Kamari Lassiter, safety Javon Bullard, both are considered day one, day two prospects. We've already gone into them, but they're going to get tested, and it should be a fun watch because Ole Miss has a wide receiver in Trey Harris that is putting up ridiculous video game-esque numbers. He seems to go like up and down.
A little bit, yeah.
Like he'll have, I picked him for my player of the week last week, and he did 2 weeks ago, and he did nothing. And then last week, he had a monster game. He had arguably the best catch of the year, where he one-handed a ball on the sideline. If you haven't seen that yet, go check out my short on Trey Harris that I put out yesterday. He just phenomenal catch. He has great hands. He's a playmaker, just putting up crazy numbers. So that's my matchup to watch. Ole Miss and Georgia, and the offense versus defense there.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup. Absolutely. I think I remember it might have been week 2 or week 3. I think when we were doing the show, I called the Trey Harris thing, and I was just like, dude, this guy is special, man. And he absolutely, you're right. It's very maddening, his the inconsistencies. But again, I think that's kind of just I feel like that's kind of Ole Miss's like game planning, maybe. Like sometimes they tend to strive to go away from them. I don't really get it, but anyway, this guy's going to be absolutely special. So definitely keep an eye out for him. That's for sure. It's a great matchup. The matchup I'm going to be looking at is in the Florida State and Miami Hurricane matchup. I mean, talk about a great rivalry. I mean, we just talked about Penn State, Michigan. I mean, this is another classic, just amazing rivalry of two great teams from Florida that are, always play each other, and just it's hell. Honestly, it's just absolute. I mean, these guys looked forward to this game every single time they play. And, I'm going to be looking at, the great Florida State offense, and especially Keon Coleman going up against the Miami Hurricanes defensive backs. I mean, you have James Williams, you have Cameron Kitchens. I mean, these two safeties are probably the best duo in the nation, and going up against that Florida State that offense, Keon. I mean, he's been doing amazing things. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking at that matchup as well. Along with probably 100 others, but that's the main one I'm really going to be focusing on, because all three of those prospects I've certainly have spent some time looking into, and again, I always like when you doing in this process, you find a couple of people and you see them actually match up, and you want to see how elite talent goes up against elite talent. And this is the absolute matchup: elite talent going up against elite talent. Their safeties in Miami are absolutely, both of them could honestly, be picked in the first couple rounds here in the NFL draft. And Coleman himself certainly is right there as well. I feel like he kind of gets, national media wise, he kind of falls below some of the major, the Harrison Juniors and, some of the other names that you're gonna hear throughout this process. But man, he really should be right there with them, honestly.
Well said, man. I couldn't agree anymore. Keon Coleman is a first-round player, in my opinion. And Cameron Kitchens is one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in this class.
He really might be. I mean, honestly, when it all shakes out, I think if he's not going to be one, he's going to be right there. And Williams just doesn't get talked about as much just because of Cameron, but He really should be because he's really good too, man. He's like I said, that's a great duo there.
Yeah, that's a really good one. You know, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, they're arguably the two best contested catch receivers in this country. So those safeties are going to get tested big time downfield. Jordan Travis loves to push the football, and that's going to happen for sure. That's a really good one, no doubt. All right, last question. Top prospects to know, week 11. You lead us off, man. I'm going with a guy that I don't think a lot of people know about.
Well, I was going to say, do you want to go first?
I can, sure.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I'm going to go towards the ACC. We just already started talking about the ACC a little bit. In Miami, I think Miami's the ACC, right? Yeah. And I'm going to talk about Jawhar Jordan. He is a running back for the Louisville Cardinals. And the Cardinals have been putting together a quietly great season. I think they're like number 13 in the country or something along those lines. And they are led by Jawhar Jordan, who is putting up monster stats. You know, he was just a beast when he ran over Duke 23-0, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. Last week he had another big game. This guy has 881 rushing yards this season, 11 touchdowns. He does have 12 receptions and 178 yards and a touchdown as a receiver. This guy is leading a Cardinals team that's making major noise and will probably take on Florida State in the ACC Conference Championship, which is crazy because we've covered this a ton, Ryan. And like Louisville was not on my ACC bingo card. No. I was looking at Florida State. I was looking at North Carolina. I was looking at Duke. Not even like some Miami, but not Louisville. So Jawhar Jordan has been kind of the rock for that offense. And that's just something to keep an eye on. They go up against Virginia Tech this week. Or no, that's not. Who does Louisville play?
Louisville, don't they play on? I think they play on Thursday.
Virginia,
that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, they're gonna run all over Virginia. Looking at their schedule really quick, Louisville then plays Miami and Kentucky. Kentucky's pretty good. They're not bad, but like they're gonna highly likely take on Florida State for the conference championship. So I just wanted to throw that prospect out a little bit. Really good runner, really good receiver. Probably will be a day 3 guy because this running back class is absolutely stacked. But he's got good size to him. He's not a bell cow by any means, but he's more of a run by committee running back prospect. But I like him a lot.
So I would just like to say, for the record, I really, really, really wish that I had gone first.
Okay.
Because that is literally, and again, maybe I wish I would have said something to you beforehand. That's literally who I was actually going at.
No, are you serious?
I just swear to God. The only reason why I was like, oh, you go first, is because I was literally trying to pull up some his overall season stats right now. As soon as you said Louisville, I was like, oh. But I couldn't agree with everything you said more. Yeah, he absolutely is somebody that's going to get lost in the shuffle. But it's definitely one of those guys where I feel like you're right. Probably a day 3 guy, but you know, he's that kind of day 3er that's going to show up on somebody's roster and, you know, due to some, you know, unfortunate events, gets an opportunity. And that's all this kid will need. And then all of a sudden he'll be, you know, running on Sundays, starting for the injured, whatever, and, you know, run for 130 yards. And he'll be, you know, that your team's new favorite player. But no, it's that's really really, really funny that you went that way. Uh, so while I um, in again looking at all of this, luckily I had a couple of
Okay.
ideas here, but I'm literally trying to scramble here as I'm trying to now pull up new information on a guy. Uh, man, this is what I got for not checking in earlier because
I'll add one. Travion Henderson has been balling for Ohio State. Ohio State has had offense issues all season long. They have the great Marvin Harrison Jr.,
sure,
but they have struggled running the ball. And ever since Travion Henderson has returned to Ohio State, they're moving the ball like crazy. Travion has like 400 plus total yards the last 2 weeks, like 3 touchdowns. Keep an eye on Henderson because once like Ohio State was actually losing to Rutgers in the first after the first
yeah,
half.
right,
And they came back because they kind of got out of their own way and said, screw it, just give the ball to Henderson. And he ran all over Rutgers in the second half. So keep an eye out for Travion Henderson.
gotcha. All right. Well, I was looking at some tight ends earlier, so I think I'm just going to go right back to my wheelhouse here and look for the one tight end that I was trying to do a little more research on,
Who
and
is
uh, it is it Ben Sinnott from Kansas State?
Ben Sinnott? He's
Sinnott,
awesome.
Sinnott. Sorry. Yeah, you're my guru when it comes to pronouncing these guys' names. But yeah, I briefly kind of saw some plays of him, over the course of the season. And while again he's not a household name, which I guess is kind of the point, but 23 ranked Kansas State has certainly been, um, some a little bit of a surprise. I think they're playing above what everybody kind of expected there in the Big 12. They do have two losses to Missouri again, who's a ranked team, in Oklahoma State, who just knocked off Oklahoma. But yeah, he's somebody that I just kind of saw some highlights over the course of his season, and I think he's kind of one of those guys that's kind of be like, probably like fifth or sixth maybe in your rankings, but he has 32 catches so far, 433 yards, only 3 touchdowns. But he is somebody that I think works really, really well in that offense with their quarterback Will Howard, who is not going to be a guy that you're going to know, but he's certainly putting together a quiet but really nice season. Somebody that I think is probably gonna end up kind of getting a day three selection from a team here. But a lot of people have kind of compared him to like a Luke Musgrave from last year, who now is on Green Bay, Oregon State guy. He's 6'4", 245. And yeah, I think he'll probably end up in that like fifth or sixth round, maybe he could surprise people and move up, but certainly somebody to kind of keep your eye on, and I know especially for the Eagles, we're always trying to find that next tight end, and we're always trying to kind of have a decent tight end three, if you will. And he'd be a perfect candidate for that tight end three spot to kind of come in. I think the Grant Calcaterra experiment might be on its last leg, if you will, with all the concussions, and we all know how I feel about the other tight end, whose name I won't even say anymore. But yeah, the Eagles need to kind of figure out what they're doing after Goddard, and now Goddard's hurt. Now they got to figure out what to do when Goddard gets hurt inevitably every year, and that's another reason why I would, I think in a lot of my mocks have the Eagles going early for that tight end to do, the the replacement draft pick as they did when they had Selleck and they drafted Ertz, and when they had Ertz and they drafted Goddard, and same kind of thing. Second round, with one of those second round picks, grabbing one of those tight ends, I think is might be the move here for the Eagles here. The more and more, the season goes on, and the more and more these injuries keep piling up with Dallas Goedert. So, but this isn't that guy. This is more of a tight end day three guy, 4th, 5th, 6th round type to maybe keep your eye out if they don't end up going early tight end next year.
Yeah, I've covered him. I really like Ben Sinnott. He's made some really nice catches this year, like one-handed catches.
Yeah, he's definitely got hands.
Yeah, he's got really good release off the line. Like you said, really good size, frame, build. I like him a lot. Yeah, he's kind of in that like that you have. Of course, you have the Brock Bauer. Of course, you have the JT Sanders.
Right, and then you get into
the next. Yeah, the next tier, which would be like Cade Stover, Brevin Spann-Ford, Bryson Nesbitt, and then probably Ben Sinnott. And all those guys I think are really good. But yeah, day 3 probably for sure. Yeah, that basically wraps up the show. Ryan, where can we find you? And final thoughts.
Yeah. Hey, listen, as the Eagles kind of roll into their bye, almost kind of marking the halfway point for their season, we're getting into it now. We're coming up on week 11 in the college football season, and man, it is flown by. I remember us literally talking about doing this show and being like, oh man, like week 0 is like right here, and as we were preparing for that first show, and man, it's flown by. But yeah, listen, bowl season's right above, right next door, honestly, and this next couple of weeks, the next couple of weeks are going to determine everything, and there are some amazing matchups not only this weekend but the next couple of weekends that are really going to determine who that top, how that top 10 shakes out, and who ends up making this playoffs. And like we said, man, it would be great to have that extended playoffs this year, but we don't have that just yet, so we're gonna have to make do. But man, a lot of great teams are gonna get left off, but and it sucks, but we'll have to figure that out next year. But as far as where you can find me, you can always find me on all social media, Philly Sports Alliance, Twitter handle right down there at Philly Sports PSA. Yeah, just doing shows throughout the week. Either on my own network, Philly Sports Alliance, or on Edge of Philly Sports. Birds of the Round Table tomorrow. So yeah, you can just catch me. Sometimes I'll be on pre and post game for the Eagles game. So yeah, it's great. Check out Edge of Philly Sports. Make sure you check out this guy, especially on Twitter. Especially find his videos on YouTube. Again, if you want to educate yourself, if you want to get better at learning prospects and just kind of seeing how this whole process kind of goes, check out some of these videos on YouTube. Go to Edge of Philly Sports YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, and then just start searching some of these great video prospects of not only top 10 lists that something we have done, but just individual prospect videos on some of these guys. You could really learn a lot from a quick hitter of video, and then do your own research and watch these players, man.
Yep. If you love college football, if you love the NFL draft, every week I put out at least a handful of winners of the week. The little shorts of highlight reels and breakdowns, and my own report on what we saw, what we learned, and just like a little scouting report. So be on the lookout for more of those, as well as highlight reels, where I put all of the highlights together, man. We're about to start cooking in about a month and a half of like ranking videos and all kinds of stuff. Like Ryan said, I can't believe how fast this season went.
Blew by.
It blew by, exactly. And I guarantee you, I did preseason rankings, and they're going to all be crumbled up and thrown out the window because so much has changed in terms of my evaluations and guys that have risen and things like that. And the Eagles' needs, of course. So a lot of
Constantly changing.
Yeah. So it's going to be really fun. Again, we'll be back tomorrow night for Birds of the Roundtable for a Eagles mid-season award show. That's going to be a lot of fun. He is Ryan Reese at Philly Sports PSA. I am Dives. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Stay awesome.